Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Report's Reality Check. And today, the reality check is for all of those people, those scummy individuals that perpetrated all this fraud against you, and now the walls are closing in. It looks like we're finally going to see accountability, and today we're going to talk about how much. We have a really special guest. First, by popular demand, we have the president of Rasmussen Reports, Ted Carroll, back with us today. And then also Mr. Peter Bernegger, an investigator up from Wisconsin. You're going to want to hear what he has to say. You're going to want to hear what he has to say about everything that's going on. New York Post. Democrat fundraiser, Act Blue, facing possible terror financing investigation amid fraud probe. Woo! Terror financing, not just money laundering. Terror financing. Democrat online fundraising program Act Blue should be investigated for potentially supporting terrorist groups following credible allegations of fraud, a Republican lawmaker has argued this week. Representative Darrell Issa, California, fired off a letter to the Treasury Department on Tuesday urging the Trump administration to investigate whether Act Blue, which has funneled billions of dollars to Democratic candidates in recent election cycles, has knowingly accepted payments from any terror-linked groups. That's a really good question because everybody talks about the methods of Act Blue, the smurfing, the money laundering on behalf of unwitting voters who have no idea that they're donating tens, if not hundreds of thousands to Democrats, even though they don't have the financial means. But the question has to be asked, like, where is that money coming from? Makes no sense how the Democrats keep squandering up $2 billion, $3 billion in small dollar donations out of nowhere, time after time, and having really surprise results, like the 2018 election that sort of gave us a curveball. And so we're going to bring on Ted, president of Rasmussen Reports, to talk about it. Say hi to everybody, Ted.
Hello, everybody. And this. Can I do a little bit of a preamble for our guest about to be clicked in? I think the most people recognize the Act Blue issue when James O'Keefe went door to door and met little old ladies who weren't giving $72,335. They were giving $7 to Act Blue. But before that, I think our guest will be able to tell us that he was part of a team that did the original research, and that's why when this thing is blowing up through the news cycle, you're talking about somebody who was there at the very beginning. So that I wanted to say that before you brought Peter in.
Well, without further ado, here's Peter Bernegger, a really great follow on Twitter and somebody who knows more about these issues and topics than I think Ted and I do combined times 10. And that's why we wanted to have him on, because we committed, like we said, to cover these issues that really very, very, very few people are. So really happy to have him. Hey, Peter, how's it going?
Hey, great. I want to tell your audience a quick funny story. Is that we were meeting privately with U.S. senators, U.S. congressmen, in person, on Zooms, telephone calls, etc., and getting directly with them, not just with their aides. And their eyes would gloss over as to what we were saying and talking about as far back as 2022 of smurfing, which is structured money laundering into political campaigns in particular. So, and they didn't get it. Then we started to rephrase our message whereby we would say, hey, when you run your race, your campaign, how your Democrat opponent is always outspending you. And then like a light bulb went on. Now it became important for the politicians, congressmen, senators to start looking into Act Blue because once they're affected, they pay attention. But if it's just us poor little serf peasants, it was just another citizen complaining about something that they wanted done. But when we kind of rephrase the message, they all of a sudden, things started to happen.
Yeah, but imagine that. Once they have some skin in the game, then it's time to wake up and take accountability. Let me ask you, how did you first get involved in this topic? I think Ted's got a lot of questions stored up, but I think everybody, a lot of people here are probably more familiar with your work maybe than even with ours. But I just, getting a little bit of that background for some people who might not be, I think would be great.
Well, we got it started. I got it started with election fraud, and we've done a tremendous amount of work on that over the last 4.5 years. And I ran into gentleman Chris Gleason out of Florida, and then Philip Allison out of Texas, and other people, and we sort of jointly, but Chris was first on this by far, is that, okay, they're cheating in the elections. You always need money to do that. All right, so let's look into the money. And that led to one thing, to another, and all of a sudden, it just became clear in our eyes of what was happening. And this is probably the most important part I want to say, at all levels. So it affects every single American. Smurfing is criminally laundering money into a political campaign. And you think, well, that's happening to a senator's race or Joe Biden's race. No, it's happening. We found it, not in all, but we found it in mayoral races, alderman races, school board races, and especially where they want to flip it from conservative to liberal. That's when you'll see the smurfing money start to come in. The Act Blues, and there's like up to 300 other organizations that we're pushing hard with the senators and congressmen and the 20 state attorney generals that we're working with, pushing hard to make sure they don't just stop at Act Blue. There's 299 more plus and more popping up. It's like whack-a-mole, that we need to eliminate smurfing from the political scene entirely.
That's way worse than I thought.
It is way worse. And as I'm stressing, it affects every single American, because you could have smurfing in your school board race. We found it. I filed a criminal complaint and also ethics complaint against our state attorney general, Josh Kaul, for smurfing $3.4 million into his campaigns. And he came from a Perkins Coie law firm. He was formed before he was elected to the state attorney general's office. He worked as one of Hillary Clinton's attorneys. So this is how prevalent it is. And I could go to almost any Democrat in the nation, but many Republicans also, where we catch them smurfing. It might be hitting around 75% of all members in Congress and the Senate. And then you go to a lot of these state races, especially governorships, up to 75% of them are smurfing. And that might be a low number, in fact.
Oh, that's appalling. One of the notes, before I give it over for Ted if he has questions, I was just using Grok and trying to wrap my head around how pervasive this whole thing is. And what was interesting is I was looking at David Brock's empire of media organizations, and the amount of the money that he got as a pass through Act Blue. So it's not only just funding necessarily these these campaigns, but it's going into censorship groups and online media policemen and hall monitors and information gatekeepers. Really perverse. It permeates everything.
If you set up a committee or a pact, you can get on and it's just signing a contract with Act Blue to have them act as a collection portal platform to process payments through your website. And if you're an NGO, a nonprofit, obviously they're most heavily into political campaigns, but they branched out. But they're being replaced now. And one of the top wanted people in the nation, in my opinion, is Jonathan Zucker. He's one of the original co-founders back, somewhere around 2006 timeframe of Act Blue. He wrote the code. What they're doing is they're using computer bots to automatically make these contributions. So they'll take a big chunk of money of, say, $50 million. The computer bots will break it all down into, $1.50, $3, $4 donations, and then pick up on the name and address that's already in the Act Blue system of some little old lady in Wyoming, and start ramming through contributions using the computer bots. Now, tied into that, though, is Jonathan Zucker, has moved on to the Transparency Network or Action Network. I'm again my
oh yeah
The Action
Yeah,
Network.
that they use to coordinate all of their protests and stuff.
And they also his computer bot program was purchased in January of 2016 by WinRed. WinRed is doing this also on a smaller scale, but still they're smurfing money into some of the Rhino campaigns, and we've named them. And again, I'll say there's 298 other organizations. Emily's List, DCCC, the DNC, state and federal. You can keep going down and down and down, whereby Black Lives Matter. They all bought this software and they're doing their miniature Act Blues. But we got to come in and we're going to shut them all down. And that's what I keep communicating to the congressmen, senators, state attorney generals. I know there's 20 of them that we've got. They opened criminal investigations back in the first one was September of 2023. And that was Jason out of the state attorney general of Virginia. And then others started to join in, Ken Paxton, Indiana, Iowa, Wyoming, and many other states. Missouri is another one. So it's an ongoing criminal investigation for more than 18 months now. And it's getting to a point, we've been supporting them all along, but I'm calling for action. It's time to go make the arrests.
Yeah, it all has to come crashing down before 2026. It feels like one of those things, though, where it's like, yeah, on certain laws you can be held accountable, but if it becomes mutually assured destruction, like that's where we're at. And so Republicans won't push on this either, because how many people have WinRed plugged into their campaigns? It's
sure, but WinRed is doing it they are doing it, smurfing, but on a smaller scale. If somebody would step up and tell them to knock it off, like one of their board of directors or something like that, they could stop it fairly quickly, but within 24 hours if they wanted to, and then go after the other ones. But I think it's going to go through because, again, you have people who are in office, like U.S. Congressman James Comer, who came out yesterday with a long interview and the video saying about the SARS reports from the U.S. Treasury filed by the banks against Act Blue. And then also the FBI has been investigating Act Blue. The 7 top executives left the other day. All their legal corporation counsel, vamoosed. That tells you something. When the attorneys run, you know that you got them.
Yeah.
So, but I was getting to is that these sitting politicians know when the next election comes in 2026, or if it happens to be in the next 2028, they know they're going to be up against this Act Blue fundraising machine if they don't shut it down. And they felt that in the past, where they'll raise $1 million and their Democrat opponent will come in with $3 million, and they'll say, "Oh, we got all these small donations. We're supported nationwide." No, they're not. They're smurfing and criminally laundering that money in, just like Kamala Harris did, the $1 billion in 90 days. That was Smurf money. That was up to 90% Smurf money from China.
She's a woman of the people.
And the U.S. Treasury.
The U.S. Treasury. Peter, let me jump in and ask again about background. You got in it a long time ago. Were you before or were you after the O'Keefe video series?
Oh, no. We work with James O'Keefe. We supplied 100% of the information and data to James O'Keefe.
That's what I thought.
All that is ours. However, God bless James for stepping up and getting a national reach on it of exposure. And that really helped, in the process.
Yeah, no, I think our viewers want to know where it started, and you're giving plenty of credit to other people that aren't on this podcast here, but you were one of the originators of the investigations that turned this thing into something, and then O'Keefe picked it up and went door to door and created the video. Yeah,
correct. And we still work with James on smurfing, even though obviously he's in the multitude of investigations. But Chris Gleason was probably the first person. Then I and others joined, and this is going on for pushing four to maybe 5 years. And it's everything's hidden from you. Of course, we don't have criminal subpoena investigative powers. So we have to do our research and public records requests and et cetera. And we have so much more that hasn't come out yet, but it's volumes and volumes of what's going on. And the other day, though, I did a podcast and I named everybody who's in on this. And I'm talking about the banks. And I'm going to name them again right now. Wells Fargo is the number one by far. And Bank of America, Amalgamated Bank out of the Washington, D.C. branch. In Wisconsin, it's Associated Bank, which happens to be the largest bank in the state of Wisconsin. And then for the financial platforms, the fintechs, we call them, Stripe is in on this, PayPal, Giftogram, Bills.com, which they bought the Divvy debit card outfit out of Utah. That's how they got sucked into this. So those are the platforms that are doing it. And as I tweeted out the other day, it's impossible to deal in very large sums of money across different entities without attorneys. It can't be done because of our legal system. And even I always say, I joke, The Godfather had an attorney. Everybody had, the drug cartels have attorneys, loads of them, right? And so you can't do it. And we identified, we have the goods. It's Mark Elias, no surprise, and Perkins Coie. They're the ones who are the attorneys for Act Blue behind the scenes, who set all this up over the decades now. And those are the ones that are doing this. So those are the names that are in on this.
Okay, Peter, you're confident that if any of these named entities offered to sue you, you would just present them with their own documents, I guess.
I'm saying this because I want them to sue me.
Okay.
Oh, discovery.
Discovery is a beautiful thing.
Okay. And you've turned over all of this evidence, obviously, to various congressional people in Congress. And did you ever meet directly with the FBI? Probably not.
No, but I can tell you that they have a case open on it on Act Blue. We meet with the state attorney generals.
Right.
Sharing information is what I mean.
Yeah.
And we haven't provided them everything because it kind of took on a life of its own, where U.S. Senator Ron Johnson and Congressman Brian Stiles, who happens to be from Wisconsin, but he's the chair of the committee that oversees the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, who handles campaign finance or donations. Right. And he happens to be from our state. But both of them have opened official inquiries into Act Blue, and then they have also been referring to the FBI, to the state attorney generals. So they're all working together. But the volumes of data that we have, the reason I say we haven't given everything, we have terabytes of data. We're one of the few, I think we're the only ones. We downloaded the FEC database pushing 4.5 years ago. We're the only ones in the world that have that. Right. And that's important. I tell you why. We've downloaded it several times over the years. So we've got historical snapshots. Nobody else has that. The reason why it's so critically important is that the FEC's database constantly changes. Even historical, let's say you go back, real quick example, to 2019, and you look up a certain query with different filters or parameters. Wait a month, go back and do the exact same query, you come up with different data. It's horrible. It's horrible what they're doing. They're moving money around. They're changing or deleting transactions, and we've got them. We've got them cold. So
these are public records.
They're supposed to be, but you can't get a public record from the FEC from 4.5 years ago, but you can from us because we saved it.
But when you're telling viewers that the same document changes within a month or certainly within a year span, that means those are altered public records.
Oh, that's true. And then on top of that is another reason is we'll see them like preload an election, a particular campaign. And let's pick U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, big time smurfing, criminally laundering money. I think a lot of it's coming from Ukraine. You're going to find that out when the audit's done. Is it
I can't prove you wrong. Right?
Yeah. Well, we published on Lindsey Graham already. It's up on my Twitter. If you look down maybe 2 weeks ago, We've been running 100, all 100 U.S. senators. I think I published on 10 of them already. We're going to publish on all of them that show up for smurfing. But if you go back to Lindsey Graham and take him as an example, he'll charge up his preload, if you will, like on a credit card, his campaign with a whole bunch of money, and then leftover money after the election, and per the FEC website, you'll see it flow back out of his campaign. And what they're doing is they're taking it to go put it into some other campaign in the next election cycle. You'll see a minus, let's say minus $15,000 from some competitor or contributor, and that minus 15,000 was taken out of his campaign, and then it was put someplace else for the next election cycle. And the Democrats are doing that big time too.
So there is confidence that the voting public can have in the FEC, Federal Election Commission, is very close to nil, right, Peter?
Nil. In fact, that Ellen Weintraub was the chairwoman who she was on there since I think 2002, and President Trump finally fired her, and then she's the one who announced, "Oh, I'm not leaving, I'm staying." I think she's gone now, as far as I know.
Yeah.
She was there specifically to cover things up. If you filed a complaint, there were certain individuals, we have the documents, where throughout the years they would file and say, "Hey, I didn't make these donations," meaning they were smurfed.
Yeah.
And stop it, take my name off, or I'm complaining, here's my complaint to the FEC. It was her job, Ellen Weintraub, to just cover it up and make it go away.
It's awful, Peter. It really is. And congratulations. It took you a long time, and you and all your team, a long time. Credit to O'Keefe, credit to everybody. Finally, it's rolling. I guess those state attorney generals check in with you, and you feed them things as they need from your discoveries, right?
Yes, and it does get to a point though where we run into private citizens run into a red brick wall, and you just can't go any further, because what we want to see is like the merchant services financial records, and that's basically Visa and MasterCard. They process like 98% of all transactions around the world. Well, all those cards, even if they're gift cards, virtual cards, international cards, prepaid debit cards, prepaid credit cards, there's 7 different types of cards. So if they process all those, that's the mother load. But of course, we can't go into Visa, MasterCard as private citizens and say, "Hey, give us your financial records." So that's
State
where
attorneys can.
Exactly. That's the blessing of the FBI and the U.S. attorney generals. They have the subpoena power, and they are going in there. The subpoenas have been gone out, and they're getting additional SARS reports, as Congressman James Comer said yesterday in the video, from the new U.S. Treasury Secretary. So those SARS reports are, going to be in the hands of the good people pretty soon.
Could you clarify that for me? So, suspicious activity report gets created by a bank, like an AML department or something like that, and it's like, oh, like terrorist money is changing hands or something. They create the report, and it gets submitted to the Treasury.
Yes, they have to. If they have a banking license or a financial institution license, like through the Comptroller of Currency or OTC, they have to file by law, or they can get criminally charged. That they something suspicious here. We have a little 86-year-old lady, banking customer, and we see there's 72,000 contributions. This is a real example. 72,000 contributions going to ActBlue from her account over X number of years. And they're mandated to file that SARS report to the U.S. Treasury or to the U.S. banking outfit, and they file it with the Treasury. So all those reports are there. The Comer said that they couldn't get them, though, because the Biden administration was covering them up by withholding those SARS reports.
This is literally Janet Yellen stonewalling to run cover for a Democrat, essentially slush fund.
Yes, and Janet Yellen should be charged, hands down, that she should be charged, because she specifically withheld SARS reports from the United States Congress in an officially open investigation.
I'm seeing sentiment in chat questioning the timeline. And I know it's like we're not gonna see a resolution here in 2 weeks, but I wasn't aware how widespread the state investigations were and how long they've been going at it. And then as far as like the FBI aspect, I assume that's probably relatively new. And we're not looking for you to prognosticate on when we're going to see stuff. Well, maybe we are. What kind of signs are we going to see over what kind of timeline do you think? Like best case scenario?
I know that I can't say what, but I know what happened in the end of January when the 7 top executives of ActBlue bolted and their own attorneys bolted. And so I know what happened, and they know that they're facing big time prison. And I'm talking about the criminal money laundering, violating the Bank Secrecy Act, wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft of the elderly senior citizens. But the biggie is it did come out, the terrorist thing on Elon Musk and X and Tesla. And they're tracing them. And the money in particular, though, is coming from a lot of it's coming from the U.S. Treasury. That's what the FBI, when the FBI stepped in, is that part of the clue. When they stepped in recently, that's when all these things happened at ActBlue, where they panicked and the rats are fleeing the ship.
So you're saying that that's U.S. taxpayer money. At least a big source of this, I always thought, Peter, was China or other enemies of the United States.
It is China. It is China. It is Iran, and it is possibly Venezuela. I don't have indication on Venezuela, but it's not Russia. That's strictly the old Russia BS. Don't ignore that. And it's China. It's billionaires like Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, Hans Weiborg out of Wyoming, the Swiss billionaire. George Soros's, but that's where George Soros's, the Tides Center and Foundation. There's 5 different Tide entities, and that's one example, a real one, of where the money is coming from the U.S. Treasury. So it goes from the U.S. Treasury to NGOs, and could go off to offshore bank accounts, and because there's multiple ways they're doing this. Then it comes into a Tide Center Foundation, to a PAC, to a super PAC, to a 501c4 dark money, and into the campaign of a Democrat or Republican, but
also
mostly Democrat.
But yeah. Also, there's federal taxpayer monies being siphoned directly into this thing too, right?
Well, I don't know if I'd say directly. I mean, it's not going from the U.S. Treasury to ActBlue into there. No.
Correct. No. All right. Yeah.
They're intermediate. Going to some NGO, which, right. By the way, in a whole other topic. I mean, we are the ones who identified. We downloaded the entire IRS database of 990s, all of them, and we ran them and looked for connections of money or names, and we whittled it down, if I can say that, to 55,000. And we put out live interactive videos that show the 55,000. You can click on any dot, and it'll take you to that specific one and show you the connections of the money and the people. Right. Now, it's in those 55,000 is where they are getting money from the U.S. Treasury. It comes into one of the 55,000 or one or more of the 55,000. Then it goes to the next one. And it's into a PAC or a super PAC, and then it gets into the campaign. That's how it's coming from the U.S. Treasury.
Unbelievable. Can I turn the corner, Peter, with you? And I know.
Let me ask one more quick question, Ted, because this is the people who are watching who are followers know that I ran into this, I think, about a week ago. Maybe it was Monday. I did a little segment on Social Security and covered some of our polling, and I let it in with this video of Paul Ryan throwing grandma off the cliff. And I was just interested in who produced that horrible piece of crap, the most historically bad political advertisement. And I tried to find out. Turns out it was put out by a guy who's affiliated with a group called Tesseract Consulting, blah, blah, blah. and it's a 501c3. It had a 990. And what was weird to me is the fundraising pattern. So it's been around for over a decade, but just all of a sudden out of nowhere, one year, like 2015 or something, it just got like 30 million. Out of nowhere. It's like, oh, 500K.
Never
400K.
seems to happen to us, Mark.
Yeah, right. Well, the 990s, I couldn't find anywhere in there that said where that money came from. So how does one find something like that out? Because it's awful peculiar.
Well, if it's a 501c3, they're required to tell where that money came from. If it's a 501c4, they don't have to. Okay.
It might have been.
But in the 55,000 I keep mentioning about NGOs that are connected to each other one way or the other, it could be a connection through the people, where you have one executive director sitting on the board of another one whose sister's married to whoever, and that's how you trace them that way too, in addition to the money. But 501c3s are required, because I have one. It's required by law to state where the money came from.
Yeah, let me look them up. But so it's like, what is the universe of tools beyond just like ProPublica for looking at the 990s?
That's about it. I mean, that's a good one to look it up, individual 990s. But, we took it to the next level where we used our fractal programming so we can, show the connection between all the 55,000. Yeah. There's millions of NGOs and nonprofits.
Peter, when you say fractal program, are you working with Jay Valentine's group?
Yes, I am. I have access to the fractal programming system on my computer.
He's an impressive guy. Yep.
Yeah, and a lot of people have chastised him, but people don't know that he did a ton of work at no charge, and he is a private company. That's his main business, and he wanted to charge for it. And what's wrong with that? I mean, it's kind of what our country's about. And people did get upset with him in the sense, well, you should do it for free for your country. Well, when you're talking about big systems like that, you can start at $500,000 cost. So it's not something easy to say, oh, just give it for free. And then it's ongoing maintenance also on top of that. So, right. But it's fantastic technology.
I remember his testimony in Wisconsin.
Yes.
And watching what he was able to find. Of course, the usual suspects were all claiming he's a fraudster and he didn't prove anything and all that. And I knew just based on their rhetoric that they were worried.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it should be in every single 50 of the states to real time monitor and correct, if you will, the statewide voter lists. But that's another story for another day.
Okay, Mark, can we move back?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking at the 990s. So proceed, gentlemen.
Peter, what I was most impressed about early on is that your diligence in Wisconsin to FOIA extracting information from unwilling government officials and going even beyond that to what you told me today. You're taking their testimony and you have their testimony. I think one of the greatest extractions was your thing from the court clerk in Milwaukee. I think I just showed it to you, and I put it back on the website this afternoon, just saying that you were coming and reminding people that this is you, and you did this. Can you? There it is. This is about. Is it Milwaukee, Peter? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And I'd like to tell your audience, in a nutshell, how they stole the presidential election in 2020, if that's right with you guys.
Yeah, bring it.
Yeah.
What they did is, again, election fraud is carried out 1,000 different ways, but the main one of how they did it in Wisconsin, we found out. We got lucky with 2 whistleblowers that came forward, and then 4,600 public records requests I personally have made, lawsuits filed, sworn testimony, depositions taken in court cases. And this is what happened, is that around between 10:30 and 11 p.m. on November 3rd, 2020, in the city of Milwaukee, Clara Woodall-Vaughn, the election clerk at the time, was sent the observers home, and she told them all the ballots had been counted. They stopped counting, and that she stopped counting just like the other 6 or 5 swing states, right around 11 p.m. Central Standard Time, roughly. And but they all stopped counting about the same time. And in our case, she sent the observers home. Well, there's some problems with that. She wasn't done counting. At 1:15 a.m., a Dwayne Johnson, not the actor, but a guy in Milwaukee. He's a young black guy in maybe early 30s. We have a picture of him, whereby he brought ballots in at 1:15 a.m. to the city of Milwaukee. Remember, everybody's gone except a few election people left remaining. At 1:30 a.m., they started firing up the tabulators again, feeding ballots through. Well, first off, you can't do it without the observers there. And second off, you can't bring in ballots after midnight. The only exception is if somebody's in line waiting and it goes past midnight by chance, they still get to vote. But you can't bring ballots in after midnight. That's illegal.
Like 2 state laws, yeah.
So then she stopped counting. So we got 3 things right there. And then at 1:30, she fired up the tabulators and started feeding the ballots through again. And at 2:30, we had a God bless her, Maria Sanchez, who filled out a sworn affidavit. She punched the clock there. She was working. And she looked back, and they were still feeding ballots into the tabulators. And she was already signed up for that 3rd shift, and she went home. And we have another one, retired Army Colonel David Bolter filled out an affidavit. He was there yet around 1:30 a.m. in the morning, November 4th, and he saw that ballots were brought in, big bags of ballots, and they started to feed them into the tabulators. And that's Claire. Then the whistleblower told us. Claire picked names and addresses off of the WisVote statewide voter database that she could see who had not cast a ballot. So these are real people. Everybody always wants, oh, dead people are voting. No. Or fake people are voting. No. They're using real people, and they're picking them because it's an inside job. They can see who had not yet cast a ballot. They pick those names and addresses off, assign them to a ballot, and cast a ballot for those people. That's how they stole the presidential election in 2020, November 3rd. And it happened on November 4th. Now, that's exactly where this email ties in. At 3:06 a.m., I have a videotape by TMJ News out of Milwaukee. They were filming her, and that's a little suspicious to start with. Why were they there at 3 o'clock in the morning to film Claire walking out of Central Count with the USB sticks with the absentee vote totals on? Well, it doesn't even make sense to me, but that they did. And thank God they did, because I have the video and it's on the internet. At 3:06 a.m., she's walking out of Central Count where they count the absentee ballots for the city of Milwaukee. But remember, she kicked the observers out, the last one, around 11 p.m. and stopped counting 11 p.m. on November 3rd. So why is she staying in there for, 4 hours? And a few other people like Neil Albrecht. He was the former clerk before her, but he was in there too. And Jonathan Zenga, a deputy clerk. And Badi Chang, a deputy clerk. Why were they in there yet feeding ballots in when the observers were gone and she already told people they counted all the ballots? So that alone shows you that there's election fraud in the state of Wisconsin. And that's in short how they stole the election. There's a lot more to the story, but I can't go on.
Well, since we have it up, I mean, the point is that she walks out at 3 a.m. and then less than an hour later, she gets congratulated for delivering just the margin needed at 3 a.m. Unbelievable.
Well, you look at the date, the time. It's 4:17 a.m.
4:07, Peter. It says 4:07.
Oh, he's talking about up here.
No, go way to the top.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. You're right. Yep.
So,
Peter, we have a separate group that we've been following and publicizing their investigation, the Clinton whistleblowers, and they are doggedly following the United States Postal Service through courtroom after courtroom, trying to get the shipping documents as to who put millions, apparently, of counterfeit ballots into the Postal Service trucking system and then out to various states unknown. Can you help the audience as to how these ballots arrived? Do you have any information that would help the Clinton whistleblowers? Because I think those ballots supposedly were in bulk. They were a huge, huge amount. So the big truck probably rolled somewhere into Wisconsin to somewhere where the load was broken up, and then a smaller vehicle, and you've named a person who did deliver the ballots, then those ballots arrived in Milwaukee. Do you have any information as to back up the chain that might help the Clinton whistleblowers?
The information I have is that it was a white truck, smaller in size, not a semi truck,
right,
that brought in the ballots at 1:15 a.m. It was not on a U.S. Postal truck.
Right.
So that's about all the information I have, except then they, when they were filling them out, that they did have help from Micah and Souls to the Polls. But this was all done with drop boxes, these nonprofits I just named, and then a non-postal truck.
All
so
right.
I don't
So
think
what,
I have
Peter,
anything to help them otherwise.
so maybe the ballots that were put through the tabulator inappropriately were manufactured locally in Wisconsin.
They were, because I took the sworn deposition of Claire Woodall-Vaughn, the former election clerk, and in the transcript and then supplemental information that was supplied later by her attorney, city attorney of Milwaukee, Peter Block, is that they were printing ballots in the back conference room of room 501 of City Hall in Milwaukee for 2 weeks before the election. They had 2 ES&S ballot on demand printing machines. She admitted they printed them, and she just conveniently couldn't remember the number. And I asked and asked and asked, and she just she could remember every single thing else, but she couldn't remember how many she actually printed.
Did she admit to making the candidate selection on those phony ballots?
No, what she stated is that they printed out, they took blank pieces of rolls of paper, which are sold to them by ES&S. I have the invoice, and it's rolls of blank paper. They put them in the ballot on demand machines, which is basically a laptop with a printer, sold to them by ES&S voting systems. And then they printed out ballots, and they're considered, it gets into some details here. City of Milwaukee is considered a Class A city. We only have one in Wisconsin. Class A cities are allowed to print ballots. It's the goofiest thing, but you can imagine.
So she printed an awful lot of ballots, but she did not admit to ticking the box on every ballot for Joe Biden.
No, but that's what those nonprofits did. And
right.
in printing the ballots for 2 weeks, and I know why, because they have at the time 316 wards. We have wards, not precincts here in Wisconsin, and so they have 316 wards. Each one of them could have a different ballot depending on aldermen, school referendums,
right.
different types of races. So, so the ballot on demand machines are perfect because you can just print some out for these wards or this ward, this ward.
Right.
And remember, they're printing them out for 2 weeks in advance, and so that gave them plenty of time to fill out the ballots, and for Joe Biden, and then put them into the system.
So my takeaway is that Wisconsin, at least to your knowledge, is not one of the targets for the Clinton whistleblowers truck to have arrived. It was a homegrown project using what they call print on demand ballots or test ballots. Yeah. Okay.
But to my knowledge, that's correct what you said. So that's how they did it. Now again, they cheated 1,000 different ways, but that was the main one that put them over the top. And I think tied into this is in Wisconsin, we never found the machines the voting machines, Dominion and ES&S, flipping votes. But what we did find is that they are connected to the internet, and then the DHS, our own federal government through CIS, CISA,
Yeah.
they can see what the vote counts are on election nights when the county clerks receive them from the municipalities, at least the ones connected to the internet. And think of that. That's exactly what you need to know is how many ballots have been cast, so you don't go over 100% turnout.
Right. And with the observers kicked out, the entire activity was illegal.
Oh yeah. As soon as the observers were kicked out, because she did it based on fraud, right there from that minute on, everything else was fraudulent, and it just compounded as the hours went by. So I mean, she needs to be prosecuted big time.
Something you said, Peter, sort of tickled something in me, and let me tell you my perspective of the election fraud. Is that I'm busy polling like all election season. I was putting in like 100+ hour weeks in September and October. And it's one of those things, it's like probably just going to bite me. I have no idea how much, and it makes my job harder. Because in 2018, you look at the midterm turnouts here, they've been pretty steady, right at about 40%. And then all of a sudden in 2018, out of nowhere, it was up to 50%, which is like, a 20% increase, absolutely massive, complete like 3 Sigma outperformance. And we got raked over the coals for being too right leaning in 2018. And so this is like basically my level of understanding about what's going on. And on November 5th, I recall watching as I was on these streams a series of events that made me think for a moment that we were going to see another 2020. Because after they called North Carolina and Georgia for Trump, it became very clear that Kamala Harris had to sweep the Rust Belt. And what I saw is that the releases were slowing down, and there were so many votes like still outstanding in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Detroit. And I looked at Wisconsin, and every single one of these cities, it was like between a 20 and 40% of precincts reporting, right? But in Madison, it was 95% in. And they stopped counting, I think, for like an hour and a half. Like, people can back me up on how long it was. Shapiro came out and gave a speech. And I thought, well, that was it. Somebody gave the message. Everybody stopped counting. They're going to do the 2020 playbook. Is that what the deal is? Like, Madison literally doesn't qualify to have their little ballot printing things in the back room? Or was something else that happened? Like, what went right this time?
Couple of things.
Yeah.
That Dane County does not have central count. Central count means that's where a municipality counts all their absentee mail-in ballots. So that's our definition here in Wisconsin. So the city of Milwaukee does it, along with now about 17 others like Green Bay, La Crosse, Wausau, etc. And so it's been increasing. But Dane County, I don't know why the city of Madison in particular has not had a central count. So the local wards or the polling places count all the ballots, including the walk-ins that day, same day voting, and also the absentee, all at the same location. They don't centralize. So that's a little play there. I think President Trump won. One is obviously he had a great turnout. He's a force to be reckoned with politically. But I give credit to the Patriot groups, including my Patriot group, that we blocked them from bringing the ballots in again. And I can prove that. Is that first off, you could see that we stopped people. I'm talking the Patriots, stopped them from bringing in loads of ballots in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia. The Patriots were there. They stopped them in Philadelphia.
Peter, let's stop for a second there. What exactly was happening? You have your group standing on the sidewalk and a bunch of people show up with boxes?
No, I hired licensed private investigators, and we also had Patriot volunteers that signed up, and we had several Zoom meetings prior to the November 5th election. And what we did is we sent our people in there, and the election officials were so shocked and scared and panicking. And this is what happened. In 2020, they in the city of Milwaukee, they had 169,000 absentee ballots. In November 5th, the city of Milwaukee, they ended up with 108,000 at 8 p.m. It dropped from 169,000 to 108,000 in one municipality. And I'm telling you, they wanted to bring ballots in, and somebody gave them the order this time to stand down on President Trump. I know how they stole the down ballot races too, but
right.
So that's what happened. You had 169,000 in 2020.
I get you.
In the city of Milwaukee, and our people stopped them from bringing the ballots in late at night like they did last time. And
how did how did they do that? Were they physically were there trucks that were rolling up that were denied access?
Physically, we had people. We had licensed investigators outside in cars watching. We had them in at the doorways. We had them in the hallway. We had them in the central count building themselves.
This is fascinating.
And then what we did is there's a law in Wisconsin where in central counts, the clerk must provide the number of that she or he received at 8 p.m. We had 3 attorneys there, and one of the attorneys went and asked the clerk at 8:02 p.m. We've got all this recorded in a diary that we want to know what your absentee ballot count is. The clerk didn't want to tell us. At 8:11 p.m., when she found out the person was an attorney and had a copy of the law with her, and showed it to her. The clerk's name is Paulina. Is 8:11 p.m. We obtained the number, which was 108,000 and change absentee ballots.
Yep.
So they wanted to bring in that 50,000-60,000 extra again. And I'm telling you, the look on their faces, they were so nervous. And then somebody gave the order, I don't know who, to stand down and don't bring in the ballots and forget about Trump. We're not going to beat him tonight.
So when you got that 108,000 and change figure, that froze the count.
Bingo.
And they couldn't bring in 10, 20, 30 more thousand more because you had the number.
And they couldn't kick out the observers either. Even if they did, it wouldn't have mattered because we had the number. She was locked in at 108,000.
Well, that's what I think. I've been waiting for someone to actually have been in a room like this, and I think our readers will be fascinated at this part because this is how you did it. You used the law. You locked the count at the time when the law said she had to provide it. And it didn't matter how many trucks were circling the block. You would, whatever came in after that with the observers, you would call those. Those would have had to be segregated and argued about.
And you're gonna this quick story you're gonna chuckle and laugh about is that remember Merrick Garland was threatening groups like us.
Yeah.
We're gonna have FBI agents at polling places.
I remember.
They did. They had this is the funny part is that 2 of my licensed private investigators were narcotics officers, and I'm telling you, they're the best undercover guys ever. They were outside working for us, watching the 2 FBI agents outside who never saw them. And so we got pictures, we got video of the 2 FBI agents sitting in the car, playing tiddlywinks. And we were keeping an eye on them. And the FBI agents never saw us.
All right. Well, Mark,
does Cash have those names? Does he have those pictures?
Well, I'm sure I could find out who they were, but in a sense, they were following orders from Merrick Garland.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. But this is real news, Peter, because there's a whole lot of people who follow us who want to know how it happened, how Trump blocked the cheat. And you're telling us a specific example of where Milwaukee? You're talking about Milwaukee?
Yeah, Trump didn't block the cheat. We did.
And did you have any help from the campaign?
Zero. We would, I tell you, some of the most stupidest people on earth is you talk to the RNC or the Wisconsin GOP. I mean, it's unbelievable. I think it's people that, can't get jobs in the real world and then they go and get those types of jobs. I mean, it's unbelievable how dumb they are. And that's a factual statement. It's not a slant.
Yeah.
I'm stating factually, these are dumb people.
So there were, I think there was a whole organization effort associated with the GOP, and they had an awful lot of lawyers, Peter, and the lawyers were supposed to be dispatched everywhere. And, go ahead.
You want to hear another funny story? I might as well tell it for the historical record. So U.S. Senator Ron Johnson sitting in a hotel room watching the election results. Nothing wrong with that. In there was 14 RNC attorneys, and they were getting their news from my tweets. And I know that because former State Assembly Representative Janelle Branchen went in there, and she was down in the inner city of Milwaukee going to different polling places and checking out and watching and asking questions and being a fantastic patriot. And then she finds out that these 14 yahoos are sitting in a hotel room watching on TV for what's happening at Milwaukee Central Count, because remember the tabulators, they had to shut them down. They had to start recounting the 31,000 ballots again because of broken seals. They had all kinds of problems. People didn't show up. Counting was supposed to start at 7. They officially opened at 8. Their employees didn't show up till 9. It was like set up to slow down, right?
That's right.
So these 14 bozos of the RNC attorneys are watching, and they couldn't get up-to-date news. But I had 17 people inside the Central Count of Milwaukee, and they were texting me live what's happening minute by minute. So then these attorneys are getting their news from me because I'm tweeting it out. You can go back on November 5th, the evening, into 2:30 in the morning, November 6th. Read my tweets. I'm giving minute by minute updates.
I remember.
Happening.
I remember.
So Janelle Branchen goes in, kicks their rear ends, and says, "What in the heck are you doing? Get down to Central Count," because this is when the tabulators are down.
Yeah.
It's approaching like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't even counting, getting ballots fed through right then. Most of the tabulators, 13 tabulators, were sitting, doing nothing, and the workers just milling around doing nothing. Right. And so then Ron Johnson and a couple of attorneys, Brian Schimming, head of the so-called head of the Wisconsin GOP, then they get down there like at 5 o'clock p.m. on November 5th, and they said, "Well, this is terrible. This is horrible. You got to get feeding ballots in and stuff like that." And, just enough for the news clip. So they get 10 seconds on the news.
There you go.
Their soundbite.
So,
and then they left. Well, we're the ones, obviously, my people stayed, and we're the ones who ended up blocking them from bringing in the bags of ballots late in the night or kicking out the observers. And I had attorneys there to back them up. I had the licensed investigators, recording with camcorders. So we got it all. I got all that evidence.
And in other cities in Wisconsin, Peter, was there a similar Keystone Cops routine with the GOP lawyers, or were there better outcomes?
Green Bay, but I had 3 people up at Green Bay on the inside, and we stopped them from bringing in also. And curiously, about the same timing when we shut them down in Milwaukee, right about the same time, I'd say 15 minutes later, then Celeste Jeffries, the clerk up in Green Bay, also backed down. And then we knew at that point Trump won.
Fascinating. I don't think I don't have you told this story before?
I guess maybe once before, but maybe not as much detail. But
we're honored. This is great TV.
We were fighting with the RNC, the GOP for months. I'll say years. And they don't even understand how elections work. And that's why I think how they come in, they're so ignorant. And they say, well, there's no election fraud, or there's just a little bit of fraud. So they don't even understand how fraud's happening.
But they didn't have people, the RNC legal team, you're telling me they didn't have people in Central Count where ballots were being handled and observers were observing? They were not there? And
No. I think the GOP had some of their own people there, but not attorneys. And this is after hours and hours of ballots not being fed through, workers not working, seals being broken on all 13 tabulators.
I remember you writing that up.
And
Yep.
and all this stuff is happening, and the RNC is still not there. And you know what they did? They called me. I have it on my phone. They asked me to file a public records request for the video camera, for the tape. They called me to do that. They wouldn't listen to us for the 6 months prior to the November 5th election. And they paid the price we did too, of course, because of the down ballot losses, which could have been prevented. But of course, no, the RNC knows everything. They just ask them.
Well, there were a lot of people who were concerned that this kind of thing would happen. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of comments after this video is released that, no, that wasn't it. We were here, there, and everywhere. But there were plenty of people who were worried that this would be exactly what happened. And you were the guy who stuck his finger in the dike. And
well,
stopped.
tell you what, you let those people say that they were there, and then we have the sign-in log sheets from the public records request I put in, and then I'll pull up the log sheet. So let those people get on the camera and recorded that they said they were there. I'm not saying there were none of them there, but not the right people were there.
Wow.
What? Let me ask. I've been saving up like a few chats of questions, and so I just wanted to take a moment to direct them for you before we go into another topic. Or listen, Peter, like people are loving this, and the numbers of views keep going up.
Yeah.
So, like, happy to have you. If you have to go, like, just give me the nod. Otherwise,
I think I would love to do several other topics with Peter at another date. And you know what? Something's going to break, Mark, in Wisconsin. And now we know who we're going to have on that night when it finally comes up. Because Peter, I know the Wisconsin legislature report was taken down from the website. The Bar Association or whatever clown group you've got out there is persecuting the judge who ran the investigation.
Yeah.
That you have, I mean, the 136-page official report, it's chock full of outrageous fraud. And all's Robin Voss and all the other poobahs want to do is move on. And it didn't happen, and the judge is a bad guy for some reason. And I think that report is dynamite, and the DOJ just needs to pick it up and start in any direction that they want, especially all those subpoenas that were put out to the people who actually worked for Zuckerberg and the election machine companies, and they just have to push those subpoenas right back at those people and get their depositions. It's very straightforward stuff.
Well, I can state straight out to your audience is that President Trump has not at all forgotten about election fraud and fixing our elections. He's going to be prosecuting. I've tweeted this. He's going to be prosecuting the very top people, at least on the ones who did it nationally, stealing the elections, 2020 in particular, but they've been stealing other elections also. And it's again, it's a death by 1,000 cuts is how they're doing it. So never get confined into one way. Now I just described through some long stories of like the main way they did it at one election in Wisconsin on November 3rd. But there's other ways that they're stealing it, like inflated voter rolls.
Right.
That's election fraud. Smurfing, criminally laundering money into campaigns. That's election fraud. I could go on. Michelle Obama has a group that's still, even though there's a lawsuit against them by Jay Stone, who lives in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Michelle Obama has a group that's paying water, food, entertainment, and even busing people and then taking them to entertainment places after or before voting. We've got people doing captains and runners downtown in certain areas of Milwaukee. You got a captain who walks down the main street. He's got runners that go off the blocks. They go down and knock on the doors and ask for their absentee ballot from the resident, and then they hand them $40. Now, our source of that is the city of Milwaukee police, but the police chief doesn't want to do anything about it. And those records are sitting in the basement building D1 of the city of Milwaukee. And I've asked for them, and then he denied that they exist. So now here's another lawsuit. But you know, we need attorneys, we need money, and it's a shame that all this money goes to fake groups like the RNC and the state GOP parties, and a lot of people out there running so-called national integrity groups that do nothing, and we're scratching for $10 to be able to do something and take real action. Right now, we have 9 lawsuits, and I'm funding most of them. 9 of them right now that we're suing people. One in Georgia, one in Colorado, a bunch of them in Wisconsin, that we're fighting to clean this up. And of course, we virtually have no support. It's sickening when then all these other guys are going around with millions of dollars.
Right.
Perfect
Perfect timing.
$250 million, right?
Perfect timing, Peter. How can people send you money if they support you?
Well, on our website, it's electionwatch.info, and there's a donate button there. And then there's also on the bottom, you'll see a P.O. box if somebody prefers to send a check. But everything, all this costs money. We hire private investigators, all the computers we have, the custom software, doing these reports, everything costs money. The attorneys are the big cost for filing these lawsuits.
Okay. Do you take money, like will someone discover you're taking money from some very bad person or controversial or anything, or is this grassroots?
Oh, this is grassroots. We're not getting money from the U.S. Treasury.
You just need to sign up for WinRed, Peter. You just
I'm
Peter.
thinking about applying for a grant as an NGO or something, because I'll supply condoms to Africa.
Oh no. If you've learned something, please follow us at RasmussenReports.com, Rasmussen_poll at Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Mark_R_Mitchell at Twitter. And thanks for watching.